The purpose of this course is to talk about behaviors we all engage in, which we use to soothe ourselves in a variety of ways, and about evaluating whether those behaviors are healthy or unhealthy, and deciding to make changes based on that evaluation. All people use different activities, substances, and behaviors to control how we feel all the time. Stress and pain, both emotional and physical, often cause the backs of our brains to take over, where our fight, flight, or freeze reactions are located. When this happens, some of us have turned to substances or extreme behaviors in order to soothe ourselves. All of us choose to soothe different feelings in different ways. Unhealthy use of a behavior can develop in relationships with people, the amount of time spent working or gaining achievements, with lifestyle choices or activities, with consuming or restricting food, with spending, gambling and debt, in sexual behaviors, or in using substances, including but not limited to prescriptions, alcohol, drugs, chemicals, tobacco, etc. Acknowledging that addiction and unhealthy behavior is not about the specific activity, relationship, or substance, but about extreme behavior, you can find what drives that extreme behavior and work from there. It's important to keep in mind, too, that we all come from a different place, and we're all different people. As we discussed in other courses, we all have different struggles and have different brains and bodies. These differences affect how we interact with substances and unhealthy behaviors. Addiction can happen to anyone because we all have similar nervous systems and brains inside of us. Medical science has proven that addiction and extreme behavior are a response to trauma in the nervous system and brain. Learning certain skills can assist in coping with this trauma and lead to a healthy and balanced life without the need for extremes. Developing these skills can lead to healing. There are not people who have addictive personalities and others who don't. We all use behaviors and substances to have certain feelings caused by the chemicals in our brains. The important thing is whether those behaviors and substances are healthy or unhealthy for us, and also what kinds of chemicals they are producing. For different people, there are a variety of different chemical feelings that they are attracted to. For some, it might be an adrenaline rush that they come back to. If you successfully steal something from a store, for example, you might get a feeling from adrenaline. This might lead people to other illegal or risky behavior to get that same feeling again. For others, it might be endorphins, which often come from exercise or sex. In contrast, some people might be trying to avoid certain chemical experiences, like cortisol, which appears when you're stressed out or don't get what you want. People might engage in certain behaviors to avoid that buildup of cortisol. So what we need to do is figure out what feelings we're having, what behaviors or substances we are using to soothe them, and what else we could do instead, if those behaviors or substances are risky, dangerous, or hurtful to others. It's important to understand your individual struggles, brains, and bodies. Having that understanding will help you make the right decisions and create the goals that are right for you. So then, what is the difference between use and abuse? What makes something unhealthy? Unhealthy behavior is a behavior that leads to being in places that you don't want to be and doing things you don't want to do. For example, I spent years working for elected officials as a staff member who represented the politicians out in public. During that time, I also abused alcohol and used illegal substances, even though doing so could have dire consequences, including loss of the job and loss of my own reputation, ultimately loss of my career. I was doing these things that I didn't want to do, namely jeopardizing my marriage, my kids, my house, my career, and I had no control over that. Other people might find themselves in the company of people they don't usually associate with, a group of cocaine or heroin addicts, for instance. That also happened to me later in life. Few of us would purposely choose to do things that could hurt us, yet addiction leads to unhealthy behaviors, which often we cannot control due to the addiction. When the brain and nervous system become overloaded from current or past stress, unexpressed or suppressed emotions such as anger, previous trauma, grief or loss, medical conditions, physical pain, or lack of support, some people develop an intense focus on a substance, behavior, or relationship as a means of coping. When your experience and your stress level push you into reacting from the back of your brain, you will turn to options that are found there: fight, flight, or freeze, or maybe a list of unhealthy behaviors you have developed as coping mechanisms. To learn if a behavior or use of a substance has become unhealthy, ask these questions. Do your behaviors have you going to places that you don't want to be? Are you doing things that you don't want to be doing? And are these behaviors leading to consequences in your life that you're not okay with? With addiction and unhealthy behavior, it's important to first answer these questions for yourself. If you can't answer those questions, you can't make a change. If someone else is answering these questions for you, you won't start from a place where you recognize the need for change. If you answer yes to any of these questions about a behavior or substance you're using, you should think about how to make changes. These behaviors have become an unhealthy way to soothe yourself. A medical doctor or a mental health professional can help you to start making those changes, particularly if it's a behavior that could potentially be fatal or lead to reincarceration. It's important to see a professional immediately. Everyone's motivations for changing are highly individual, and everyone has different limits for what they can handle or accept. For example, someone might not have a problem living in their car, but losing the car makes the problem big enough to motivate change. For every person, the consequences that are harsh enough to drive them to change are different. In my situation, for instance, losing the marriage and losing the home were not enough. Several arrests and even homelessness wasn't enough. Ultimately, the complete loss of contact with my family and friends was the consequence that nudged me toward change. For others, just one of those examples, loss of marriage, loss of home, loss of their job, that could have been enough. The reason for this is unhealthy behaviors become coping strategies. They may help a person to overcome anxiety, depression, or even fatigue. The use of a behavior or substance is helping to alleviate these negative feelings. When the use of this thing is no longer soothing enough, that's when a person might be ready to seek other solutions beside the addictive behavior. Until a person has another way to soothe those feelings they struggle with, they can't and won't change. The back of your brain in these moments is soothing terrible feelings by using unhealthy behavior or substance use. When this is happening, the part of our brain that allows us to empathize with others can't be accessed. So we can't feel that our behavior is hurting others. We can't see how our actions are devastating those we love. The goal is to recognize when you will be pushed into the need to soothe in particular ways. These moments are often called triggers. For some of us, it might include loud noises or crowded places. These are what can be called external triggers, such as seeing a liquor store sign, or a visual that reminds you of using, like tinfoil or small plastic bags. For myself, it's internal triggers, anxiety and frustration. Large social settings can cause anxiety, which I used to address by drinking. And I used to be very easily frustrated, which caused anger and more feelings that could to be quelled by substances. Most of the time, if we're happy and safe, we live in a space where we want to go to our programs, and we can see when our mom is hurt by us or our boss is disappointed, and we care. But when we encounter our triggers, our brain will revert to that fight or flight to the back of our brain that we talked about, that we can't make responsible choices as easily. If we use extreme behaviors to soothe, it will happen in these moments. You will need to be able to identify when you're in those moments, when you need to soothe, and figure out better, healthier ways to soothe before extreme, unhealthy behaviors become necessary. Let's talk about substances specifically. People have different reasons for starting to use substances. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, people begin taking drugs for a variety of reasons, including to feel pleasure, to feel less pain, to perform better, or out of curiosity or peer pressure. Someone might have started just because their friends were doing it, for example. Some people start using substances to treat physical or mental pain. But for many, using might also soothe in ways we didn't even know we needed. We might start using a substance for one reason, but keep using substances because we've discovered how it works to soothe our discomfort and negative feelings. Chemical dependency and addiction to an extreme behavior are two different things. Chemical dependency is when your body will actually become ill or even fail if you don't have the substance present. If your body is physically dependent on a substance, you will need to have medical help to stabilize you while you stop using. This is because your body is releasing so many chemicals as a reaction to your stress as you go through this. In this state, you can get to a point where you're sick and tired of using the substance. You want to be done with it, but your body is still requiring it. These substances include alcohol, and by the way, this drug is the absolute most important to get medical help with to stop. It also includes opiates and benzos. Let's take a moment to address a side note on opiates. The brain has a certain number of opiate receptors. When you're in pain, those receptors tell you that you're in pain. Painkillers cause those receptors to stop sending that message. If you continually fill these receptors, your brain will create more of them. Over time, you'll just have more and more receptors. You may grow so many that you will be in constant pain if you do not have the opiates in your system. Methadone fills these extra receptors, so people with too many receptors can live without that constant pain messages. There are many ways to manage this kind of chemical dependency, and among them is medication. The choice to manage opiate addiction is a personal one that you should make very carefully with a medical professional. Next, let's discuss diagnoses and addiction. In the mental health space, people can be diagnosed with a substance use disorder if they are identified as having an intense focus on a particular substance or a variety of substances that have led them to act in ways that involve breaking laws or causing harm to themselves or others. This diagnosis, along with others such as acute withdrawal syndrome or intoxication, can be given to an individual to allow the medical or clinical facilities caring for them to bill insurance for a client who needs therapeutic support to manage or stop a compulsive behavior. Though this label is only necessary for the billing of medical care, some choose to adopt this language as a means of connecting or collaborating with peers within a self-help space, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon family groups, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Debtors Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, and other peer support managed groups. The label of addict or alcoholic is optional and can be helpful in feeling a part of a community or identifying with others. The term addict can also be used as a means for taking responsibility for harm, debt, or neglect. However, this label can also be harmful to the self-esteem of a person if forced on an individual or used in a way to separate them from their community. It can also be used as a way to escape responsibility, as an excuse for behavior, which is not helpful to anyone trying to better themselves. The labels you choose to use are your choice. Finally, let's talk about soothing and healing in healthy ways, which is also discussed at greater length in the video about healing. As discussed in the course that covered ways of healing, we're not here to decide for you that your behavior was unhealthy. We're here to offer some examples of healthy behavior if you've decided that you want change. Other people call it reaching rock bottom. Our way of seeing it is this, that you are ready for change when you've reached a place where the price tag is too high for you to continue the questionable behavior. And only you can decide that you've reached that point. When you've decided to make that change, remember to pursue these things. Find and create environments that are soothing and comforting. Know what will make you uncomfortable and what you will find soothing, and pursue those soothing things. To put in perspective, let's outline how I applied these elements to my own recovery. I found, through support groups and therapy, environments that are comforting. I discovered going to 12-step meetings consistently, even if just every other day, calmed my anxiety. In sobriety, I rediscovered my love for long walks and exploring the beach, and I also rediscovered reading. The books were always there. It just took sobriety for me to rediscover that. During the process of establishing a recovery routine, thanks to counseling and group sessions, I paid close attention to situations or even people that made me anxious or just not right. It could have been social situations where alcohol was served, or agitation at work, or even just someone I disliked in certain 12-step meetings. With all this new knowledge, I know to pursue soothing things. It may sound somewhat strange, but it's not. With sobriety, you feel feelings that the substances once masked. Those feelings can help tip you off that something's just not right. There's no shame in politely avoiding situations that could prove a trigger. I've actually quit a job and passed on work projects just because I can anticipate the stress that I just wasn't ready for yet. Find a therapist or support group that you trust and that can provide the important help that you need. It's important to try to do fundamental things that support your body, like getting sleep, eating well, exercising. If your body is healthy, you'll be able to start to work on your mind, your heart, and your spirit. Nutrition, sleep, and exercise also affect your mood and your decision making. Choosing to replace unhealthy behaviors with healthy ones and making that change can be one of the most difficult things you accomplish in life. But it's also the most important step to leading a full and long life. Take your time and be kind to yourself, but also use this transitional time to really self-reflect and take inventory of where you can improve and make better choices for yourself and for your loved ones. Thanks for watching this video. Best wishes.